think life feels so chaotic right now with seemingly no let-up. The overwhelm can just make us feel that life is too much and we're just drowning in it all, aren't we? This becomes particularly apparent, doesn't it, when we don't build in those breathing spaces that we all need. This was one of those days where I really didn't want to leave the house, but I made myself go for a therapeutic nature walk and felt much better afterwards. But what happens on the days where you really can't even push yourself into getting out of the house? I'm not exactly agoraphobic, but I definitely experience a really strong resistance some days when it comes to stepping out of my own front door. At these times, the world just seems too chaotic and overwhelming. As I've got older, I've learnt the best thing is to just let myself be on those days and allow myself, where practically possible, to stay inside the confines of my safe, cosy home space. I have a feeling I'm not the only one who goes through this, especially in today's upside-down world. So I thought I would honestly share how I feel, and most importantly, what I do to take care of myself during those vulnerable times. In all honesty, the last few days I really haven't wanted to leave the house, and I haven't. So if you've been here a little while, you may notice that I'm in my home studio, and I've been at home for the last few days, and I suppose I could say all sorts of things about that, but if I'm being really honest, the reason I'm at home is because I'm really struggling and I'm finding it hard to leave the house. Yes. So you'll have to let me know if that sometimes happens to you, or perhaps often happens to you. But it's my safe little nest, my cocoon, and I just can't face, going out there. It just all feels a bit much sometimes, doesn't it? There's a quote that comes to mind from Van Gogh, which is, "I don't know if I'm extremely sensitive or life is unbearable." Sometimes things just feel really, really heavy. And so when I have those times, as we inevitably do in life, we have the ups and the downs. And as they say, we wouldn't be able to appreciate all the ups without all the downs and the bits in between. And I always try to think about ways that I can flip things around. James always says to me, "Can you flip it?" And so when I do feel like this, it's a really good time for me to max out on my self-care habits. And these are some of the tiny habits that I do that make a really big, powerful difference. So I thought I would share them with you in case they help. And do feel welcome to write your own in the comments as well, because then we can all share ideas. Somebody might really need to see your little tip. It might be something that you just do without thinking, but somebody might just read that little tip that you share and it might make the world of difference to them. Apart from the fact, of course, that I love reading your comments too. Yes. So let's get cosy and comfy, shall we? I think the first thing to mention is the basics. And I could spend, half an hour talking about the basics, but I kind of feel like we all know what those are. Make sure that you eat well, healthy food, as least processed foods as possible is kind of where I'm at the moment. And then lots of hydration, lots of good water, exercise, fresh air, nature, all the good things. So I can't really talk about self-care without talking about the basics. So the next thing on my list is productivity, because you might think, oh, she's at home, she's just, chilling, resting. And like most people, I've got bills to pay, so I have to do my work. So I have to get stuff done, basically. And I could say a different word instead of stuff, but yeah, I think you get the picture. So on the one hand, I have to be productive, but on the other hand, I have a choice of how I look at my productivity. So instead of thinking, oh, I've got to get everything done and be really strict and hard on myself, I break things down into priorities and I do something straight away that needs ticking off. So it might be a phone call or an email, something like that, but it might be something that's been nagging at me for a few days or even longer, sometimes a few weeks. And so if I get that out the way straight away, I can do a sigh of relief and feel a little bit accomplished. And then I can make my priorities list, and if I'm feeling really low energy and struggling a lot, then all I have to do is to tick off my absolute essentials off that list. So it's another way of looking at productivity, and the way I look at it, it kind of softens the productivity aspect. It takes the pressure off basically, and it doesn't feel so hard going on my energy levels. And I think that brings me nicely on to the next point, which is rests. And so it's really nice to have a full day or a full week or a holiday, a fortnight even, to rest and truly have a break. But what if you've got to get stuff done, or you've got a really busy week coming up and there's lots of pressure and things like that? What do you do? And even though today for me, I don't really have a high pressure day, I do have stuff I want to get done and that I need to get done. So how am I going to navigate that with low energy? Well, the way I do it is I build in little rest spots within my day, and that can be anything from just 2 minutes quiet time. It really helps to take a moment, and it can just be a little moment just to detach and rest. We've all heard of the power nap, haven't we, and how 10-15 minutes can really recharge the batteries. And okay, it's not a proper sleep, and so we haven't got the capacity for that on those days, but just do your best to make your time and your energy work for you. I think a big part of that as well, isn't it, is to learn about yourself and what you actually need. And that can be a bit of a hit and miss process sometimes as well, can't it? But any rest you can get can help. You know, rest is so important, isn't it? It can help with cognitive function and emotional regulation. They say sleep helps with everything. Well, that goes back to the basics. But what if you haven't had enough sleep and you've still got a busy day? I think this is the second best thing to do. And it just helps us think more clearly, doesn't it? So the next thing I do, and I don't always succeed, but I do endeavour to try, is to do everything with mindfulness. So whether it be sketching or journaling or washing the pots or gardening, doing something pleasant or something that perhaps isn't so pleasant, doing something with mindfulness keeps you in the moment. And why do we need to stay in the present, you might ask? Well, because it keeps us in a state of inner calm and inner peace. And the reason for that is because we're not thinking ahead of what might happen or what we've got to do, and we're not looking back and worrying about something that maybe did happen but there's nothing we can do about it. And it slows our brain activity down immediately because we're concentrating on doing one thing at a time instead of trying to multitask like crazy beings. And that's how I often feel as well in our current world, because everything's going on at once and there's so many stimulus from every direction, isn't there? And it just seems to bombard us 24/7 if we let it, doesn't it? Something that is often sidelined and put to the bottom of the priorities list is time to play, isn't it? So I think it's really important that we make time for our hobbies, things that we enjoy doing for fun. Basically, you don't have to be an expert at it, you don't have to even have done it before, but something that interests you that you'd like to spend your time doing. And I suppose for me it's a bit of a funny one, and it might be the same for some of you out there, in the sense that, you know, my art and creativity is what I do as a job, but also what I do for fun. And of course, like any job, not all aspects of it are going to be enjoyable. And so the way I get round that is to have art sessions that are just for me to play and experiment. And if I don't have those playtime sessions, then I can find myself really bogged down with even some of the aspects that I really, really enjoy, because it's more of a pressure. And then that pressure shuts down the creative brain. So I have to make sure I have my balance with those two things, if that makes sense. But often our hobbies are something completely different. So I really enjoy other stuff as well. I love gardening, I love reading, I love walking. And I'd really like to get back into crocheting as well, because I absolutely love crocheting. And I haven't done it for ages. No. Something that we can always do as well, no matter where we are, is improve our physical environment, our physical spaces, because that really makes a difference to how we feel, isn't it? It changes the whole energy of the room. And a messy, cluttered space can also breed a messy, cluttered mind. So we know this, don't we? So I think just a few minutes tidying up a little corner. Sometimes it's just puffing up the pillows on your sofa and making a nice comfy space to sit. Or if you're actually looking at things and you've got kind of clutter on flat surfaces, you can spend just like 5 minutes, not even, just clearing those spaces. Even if you're just making little piles and putting them on the stairs or where they need to go, that can just really clear your whole brain space. So if you're taking a bit of time to have a cup of tea break, then what greater gift can you give yourself than to have it in a nice, tidy, organised, relaxing, calm space as well? I'll often whiz round the house and sort of pick up things that get left in certain areas. I'm very much of like, come in and I put stuff down where I am, if you like. And so it can quickly create quite a mess. You might have seen my studio. And so I do have a creative brain, but I have ways at home to get round that. I like to do the dishes in my sink and tidy up the kitchen to keep it all clean and hygienic, and the bathroom as well, and just have a quick pick up around me. And anything else can kind of wait, if that makes sense. But I just prioritise what's really bothering me. You know, so while I'm having this cocoon time at home, because I really, really don't want to leave the house, I might as well enjoy every moment of it, mightn't I? And while we're talking about clearing and decluttering as well, let's talk about clearing and decluttering our mind, our brains. Because if there's stuff going on up here, it doesn't really matter what our environments are like. We are going to feel quite stressed, quite anxious anyway, aren't we? So yes, it helps to tidy up around us, but we've still got this that needs tidying up in there. So I think you know what I'm going to say next. I always suggest this. And if you've been around here a little while, you will know that I've made whole videos on the topic of journaling. So please do journal. And I journal on my computer because I can get my thoughts out really, really quickly. And I know there's benefits to actually manually, physically with your hand and a pen and a pencil. But I also really like getting all the jumble of thoughts out really, really quickly onto the page. And then I can clarify things and work out what things I can change. Can I do anything about this? Can I not do anything about it? And if not, that helps me let it go, if that makes sense. We might sometimes look at the complete picture of inner calm and strength and all that, but there might be some inner turmoil going on. So make sure that you allow yourself the time and space to get that out and let it go and process it. This is for mental and emotional health, general well-being, because if we don't feel well up here and we're going around in circles in things that, you know, we're just basically getting ourselves into a pickle, and then that triggers off all the hormones and the chemicals in our brains, in our bodies, and then we start feeling physically unwell and tight and tense and feeling sick and all the things that stress brings, panic attacks, all that stuff. We need to stop, breathe, journal. I often, if I get myself into that state, I will lay on my yoga mat and stretch. I will do my legs up the wall pose, or lay on my bed and put my legs up the wall. It's a yoga pose. It's supposed to cure any ailment, and it's fantastic for stress because it just calms you down. Stay there for 5 or 10 minutes and then get my journal out and start writing. You know, life is inevitably stressful. We do have stresses and strains within that, so we have to learn to emotionally regulate and balance those emotions. But it is a physical reaction within the body, so we have to acknowledge that as well. So cut yourself a bit of slack and give yourself some tools for your toolbox, because you know it's going to happen. One of the things I've really absorbed, I wouldn't say no because I've known it for a long time, but I feel like I've really absorbed the absolute knowing of not really worrying about what other people think. So if somebody else thinks this, that or the other, it doesn't really impact me. It doesn't really have anything to do with me in that sense. If it's close loved ones, then it is going to impact. But at the end of the day, most of the people who might think something or have an opinion or a judgment about what you do or what you say or how you choose to live your life, etc., it really has nothing to do with you. And there's an old saying, isn't there, that says, what other people think of you is frankly none of your business. And I know often that's easier said than done, so don't get me wrong, it's not always the easiest thing, but it's really important to just bring yourself back to centre and actually think about, in reality, does it actually matter? And even if it does matter to you and has hurt your feelings, if there's nothing you can do about it, then you need to process it and let it go anyway, don't you? So we need to learn to manage ourselves. And the more tools we have in our toolbox to do this, the happier we are going to be in life, aren't we? We know this. One of the busiest and trickiest things that our brains does, and they have to do this every single day, is the decision-making process. Our days are filled with countless necessary decisions, aren't they? Some big, some small, some in between. But all these decisions, no matter their size, use up our mental energy, deplete our brain and cognitive function. We need to learn ourselves how we make decisions, because there are different types of decision makers. And one of the things that really helped me was learning about human design, which is elements of the I Ching, the astrology, and the chakra system, so ancient systems, and it all comes together into something called human design. And you can Google it and look up websites. I'll put the name of somebody that I use because I really, really like the way she thinks about everything. But basically, one of the core aspects of the human design system is to learn how you make decisions, and it teaches you what kind of, it does like a body map, and it teaches you what type you are and therefore where in your body you make decisions. And then what you can do is sort of experiment with it, so you can kind of live by the design of the body map and see what happens. Because when I did that, I realised that it all sort of clicked into place for me, and I realised exactly how I make decisions and why I found decisions hard as well. And it also helped me learn how, say for example, how James makes decisions as well, and how we work together on a decision making process, because he makes decisions in a really different way to me. So now that's simplified our joint decisions as well, which has made life much, much calmer and easier. But even if you're not into any of that astrology stuff, which I know a lot of people aren't, I think we still need to remember to listen to our bodies, because our bodies do react to things and they do give us messages. You know, we have instincts for a reason. They're trying to communicate to us. And I think we should listen and respond to those body messages, and also notice, you know, what happens when we don't listen, and maybe journal around that as well, because that's very interesting. When we don't listen to our intuition and our instincts, what then happens? Because I know time and time again I used to say, oh, I wish I'd listened, that was my gut reaction, that was my intuition, and I didn't listen. And then I've learned now to always listen to my intuition where I can, because it's my inner guide and my inner wisdom. I think in today's chaotic world as well, we could all benefit from coming back into our bodies, reconnecting or enhancing our connections with those bodily sensations. You'll have to let me know what you think. One of the vital things that I've done since menopause as well, since I've been going through this menopause tunnel, as I call it, and I'm still going through that tunnel as well. I haven't come out the other side yet, but I feel like I'm maybe 3/4 of the way through, if that makes sense, because I'm pretty far along with everything. But one of the most important things that I took note of throughout this time has been my energy levels. And there's different types of energy, isn't there? Like we've just talked about decision making and how much energy that can take up, because whether your decisions are large or small, it's been scientifically shown shown that it takes just as much energy for your brain. But there's also things like, your social energy or your physical energy. So we've got different branches of our energy level tree, if you like, and we need to make sure we're looking after those. And the way to do that is to first of all get to know our own energy levels, which can shift and change as times go on, and week by week, day by day, sometimes hour by hour, but also learn how we recharge. So what's the quickest way you can recharge a flat battery when it's yours, if that makes sense? And once we've got that knowledge, then we can apply it to everyday life where and when we can, and fit our self-care within that sort of map of our own energy level system, if that makes sense. Just learning what things use my energy most and what recharges me the fastest has been absolutely invaluable for me navigating my hormonal changes and menopause. I'll even go as far to say it's saved me so many times. And that's why this is so important, these self-care habits that we build within our day-to-day, because it helps us balance against all the chatter, all the outside crazy, chaotic overwhelm. We need balance from that, and we need to give ourselves the chance to recharge regularly, don't we? If we're ever going to balance our social energy, our out there energy, if you like, we definitely need to know how to say no, don't we? When we say yes to something, we say no to something else. And so sometimes it helps to analyse, is the thing you're saying yes to more or less important than the thing you're saying no to? Because if the thing you're saying no to is more important, then you should have been saying no to this and yes to this, if that makes sense. This is all about learning boundaries and learning how to embody your boundaries out there, how to say what you need out there, because that's harder than it sounds, isn't it? We have to learn to set boundaries that work for us so that we can be the best person we can possibly be. And we don't actually have to feel bad or guilty for saying no, and we don't have to feel bad or guilty for not explaining if it's something that's personal. And obviously it's like anything, isn't it? The more you do it, the more you embody it out there, the easier and more comfortable it's going to feel, isn't it? So we don't get it right every time, and I think it really helps to have this quote from Maya Angelou, which is, when we know better, we do better. So no beating ourselves up when we make a mistake, when we do it wrong. This is where we need to let go and move forwards. So instead of saying, why did I do that? Or why did I say that? Or I wish I hadn't done that. Instead of saying that, we say, what can I learn for next time? How can I do that differently next time? What can I do instead? And then we move forwards. So we're moving into growth, self-development and growth. And it's going to make our lives easier as well. I think living with true balance in today's world is really, really difficult, really challenging. And many things seem to have spiraled out of control since the lockdowns. Prices for one, greedy big companies just making so much profit and everyone else struggling to put the heating on or buy their food bill every week. The basic struggles are becoming more widestream, aren't they? It's affecting more and more people. And this is when it really helps to remember to do what we can with what we have. Try not to compare yourself with others. You're not behind in life. You're just doing your best with what you have right now. It's good to acknowledge envy. Yes, it's there for a reason, but not to stay there. And I think always flipping back into gratitude, because that's where the peace is. Those jealous emotions are useful because they show us where we would like to be in life. They show us what inspires us, and that can help us move us along on our journey, because it might feel a little bit uncomfortable going in that direction. We might not know what to expect, but it is following our dreams. So if you see someone else following a dream that you really, really want, then, and it might feel a bit scary, but it is telling you that information. So take that on board and listen to it and use it for that. Shift it back to gratitude, always. It's a great antidote for that. And I think the comparison towards others becomes so much easier in the world of social media, doesn't it? It's so much easier to slip down that spiral. And when you feel yourself slipping down that spiral, notice, try to fine-tune your goals around those feelings. And that way they become useful and not negative for your well-being, if that makes sense. I think life feels so chaotic right now with seemingly no let up, and the overwhelm can just make us feel that life is too much and we're just drowning in it all, aren't we? This becomes particularly apparent, doesn't it, when we don't build in those breathing spaces that we all need. And of course that looks a bit different for everybody because we're all unique, but we need to learn what we need, how to ask for it, and how to take care of ourselves properly, don't we? An education of the self and a mastery of our emotions. So that's why I'm okay with myself if I feel the need to stay at home, to cocoon, to hibernate. I know why I'm doing it, and I know I need it, and if I can manage it around all my other commitments, then I let myself do that, and I don't feel bad about it. Because if we let ourselves feel guilty for having a rest, then that undermines the value of the rest. So it's a big no-no for me. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching and keeping me company. Try to keep your light shining bright. I will if you will, and I'll see you really soon in the next one. Bye for now.